Hi everybody, 5th of April, Sunday 5th of April. It's been quite a while since the last video, and to be honest, all that's been happening in that interim period is largely the fry from last year's spawning have been just growing and developing here. The reason for the video today is time to do the final selection of those babies and select a few which are going to be kept probably no more than half a dozen. If I keep 10, that's fine, that's all I'm looking for. And then we're starting now to look forward to the spawning for 2020. I hope everybody out there is safe and well in this sort of terrible situation we're in at the moment with the coronavirus. Not ideal for anybody, and it's certainly not ideal for me here with the plans that were going on for this year. 2 or 3 days before the social distancing thing started in earnest, we started the construction of a space for 4 tanks at my brother's house, which is just around the corner, literally a quarter of a mile away. But social distancing being what it is, and respecting that and the government's request, we had to put that build on hold. There's 2 tanks now that were always planned to come into the garden here, but that was sort of the phase 2 of this year's building. So we're going ahead with those, but I'll talk about that a little bit more maybe later this on this video, or maybe tomorrow as we start to get that construction started, because those 2 tanks are scheduled to arrive here tomorrow now. Yeah, so the main task today is to go through the fish in the tank behind me, which are the remainders from the spawnings that took place. There's maybe a couple of very small ones which were from spawning number 3, or perhaps survived from spawning number 2, not really sure. But the vast majority is from the first spawning that we did. So aim to keep half a dozen of those. There's also some new parrot fish that have been bought over the last 4 or 5 months now, I guess, since they were first acquired. And they're now in the tank as well. So first task, get those out. Then net up all the other fish, and we'll talk about those a little bit more once they're sorted out and into the net, and as I go and select through them. So take a quick look at these whilst I remove these from the tank first, so they're not messed around as I'm netting the other koi out. So these are fish which have been acquired over the since the harvest season really, in Japan, as potential parent fish for 2020 for this year. The Kujaku, the larger one, female from Omasako, and the smaller one from Wada Koi Farm in Niigata, the male. Very interested to do Kujaku this year, something we'll talk about a lot more as the spawning season commences. The Goshiki, just coming out of the shadow there. This is a female from Kawakami Koi Farm, who for me is just about pretty much the best Goshiki breeder there is at the moment. Oh, there you go, get in the sunshine. So she's the female. So I'll talk about more as time comes to spawning and why these fish particularly were picked. The Ginri and Goshiki here from Kano Koi Farm, who obviously needs no introduction whatsoever in terms of Goshiki production. And the little Ginri Kahaku was actually a little Momotaro Tosai that came into Koi Water Barn last year for their opening event, and I acquired it with no real reason to what I was going to do with it. I just liked it and thought one day it may have a use in what we're doing and what I want to do, so that was why it was picked up then. So this, the hopes for the future, and now I need to net up the 60 or so fish that are in the tank and start looking through those, so get these covered up safely and secured whilst I get on and do that. Right, the pool now contains the offspring that remain from 2019 spawning. I think there's about 50 or 60 fish in here, 60 fish probably. There's a few small ones which were from the third spawning. There's a couple of bright yellow and white ones, and I'm not really sure where they've come from. They may be from the second spawning, I don't know. But so, decision now to go through these and make some selections for a few that are going to stay with me through the summer to be grown on. There's a couple of definite favourites that I know already, and it may be that I stick with those, and it may be that a few more get added. Time will tell, but we'll have a little look as we're going through them. Okay, first up, number one, 100% definite keeper. This one here in the net. See, it's bigger than that, in fact. Absolute star of the spawning. I've said several times, if this was the only fish that I had from the whole spawning, then I'd be satisfied. And to be honest, you know, today, if I just decided to keep this one, I would be very happy. In every respect, it's a million miles away from all of its siblings. It's just the one. The size, is the pattern, everything about it. There's just nothing else that compares to it at all. I mean, the rest of the spawning. So really interested to see how this one develops over the course of the summer. But yeah, anyway, so we'll move this into the tank next to me, and then we'll take a look at some of the others that are possible keepers. In the bowl now, several Kujaku kind of koi, single coloured fish. And looking through them, and there was always one which was without question a favourite, and that's this one in the centre of the screen now. If you follow me on Facebook, I've posted this one several times. It's the one that's developing in the nicest pattern, has a really nice shine. Nice balanced Modaguro. So without question this one will be a keeper. There's one other one which is teasing me a little bit, and that's the larger one. Very much like its size compared to its siblings. It's got nice shine, it's got nice Modaguro as well. And it'll just be interesting to see how it's going to develop, whether it's going to develop a pattern, go black. And lovely line of scales along its back that go all the way to the head as well. So at the moment, from here, there's two fish which are going to go into my keeper's pool, and that's these two that have just swum together, in fact. So we'll get those swapped across. These two were also in that selection we just had in the bowl, and still kept them in the bowl for now. I'm thinking one of these may be keepable, just for interest to see how it develops in terms of colour on the scales, etc. I'm thinking it's going to be the one that's underneath now. If we look closely, just this one here on the right hand side, just slightly more shine on the scalation on the back. The scales are slightly nicer on the back. So at the moment, the light's horrible today, it's nice and sunny, but horrible for making clean video. But, so yeah, this one here I think Nice bright luster to it. So for the moment anyway, that'll go across into my little keeping bowl. Yeah, the one at the top of the screen. Just see the light catching its dorsal scales there. In the bowl now, a group which would fall into the sort of traditional Beni Kikokuru category. Yeah, I'm really not sure what I'm going to do about these. This small one here with a fairly light sort of 3 spots of red. In terms of quality, probably the nicest. Lovely scales on the back. Excuse me if I keep losing the fish I'm talking about. I can't see a thing in the sunshine. Yeah, this one here, I'm thinking at the moment I have to give that my #1 shot from the bowl, but this big one, very hard not to keep. Just to see how it develops. So I think it's going to be probably those two that make my cut. Although this one in the this one at the back there, developing a nice proper Beni Kikokuru pattern. So maybe I'll pop that across for the moment and then we'll see where we're at in terms of numbers. One thing I dislike about this one that's at the bottom now is the fact that the Motoguro on the fins isn't balanced. That's just me being really pedantic. Decisions, eh? These 4 in a bowl are a little bit of a mystery, to be honest. They're so much smaller than any of the others that I have. I'm absolutely intrigued to know which spawning they come from, and I can't be 100% sure. Now, one of them, which is obviously by far the nicest, which is the one that's on the left hand side now with a prettier pattern, this one coming along on the bottom. You know, it's an absolute spit an image of its mother, assuming it came from the first spawning. However, I have serious doubts about that on the basis of its size. And interestingly, when it just turns and opens its mouth, it looks like it's got black lips. So really have no idea of the origin of these 4. They're all really bright and shiny, all really pretty, but it's just their origin's a mystery. But one of them, the one I've mentioned already, the larger of the ones, the prettier one, even though it's a lot smaller than everything else I'm keeping, is one that I think I shall keep, which puts me up to 8 keepers, which I'll show you all of them in a little while, and talking about them a bit more. We've talked about them all already, really, I suppose, but we'll show you as a whole, that group, which will stay with me to grow through the course of the summer. Okay, so this is the 8 koi from last year's spawning, which I've chosen to keep. Every one of them has something about it that interests me. I'm interested to see how they develop. One of the absolute most important things for me is the Deutsch scalation on these fish. Because one thing I really dislike is random uneven scalation. So that was a very important consideration. And they also represent a cross-section of the different styles of fish that we've had from this single spawning. When you consider it was the spawning of one male and one female that took place back in 18th, 19th of May, the night of 18th, 19th of May. The variation that you get from a single parent set, which is kind of testimony to the huge amount of different fish that have been put together by different breeders in creation of Benikiko Kiryu over the years that they've been doing it. Obviously, so the parents of this was a fish from Marasaka, and the male was from Marasaka, the female from Aoki. And over the course of the years, those breeders have put so much different stuff in, which is why you can get such a huge variation from that parent set, which is one of the interesting things, and one of the things I think I must have spoken about back in the day, or the first days of when I started speaking about the spawning I was going to be doing, was the fact there was a chance of throwing up something really unusual. And I'm sure that if I'd have done a Gosanke spawning, and people used to say to me, well, I thought you was going to be a Showa breeder. If I'd have done a Showa breed, I feel quite sure there wouldn't have been 8 Showa that have interest to me at this stage of the game. Certainly given the small number of babies that we started from, and that this has all come from. So, let's say 8 fish. The largest, this one here, is probably around 30 centimeters now. 28-30 centimeters, gives you an idea of the size in general. The smallest yellow one probably, I don't know, 10-12 centimeters. Yeah, this Benikiko Kiryu here, if only it had more of a pattern to it, then it would be a quite stunning example. And then the one here on the bottom is just my little idiosyncrasy that would love that to have matching pectoral fins. This Kiko Kiryu here, my favourite by far of the Kiko Kiryu, and the one that shows the greatest sign, I think, of developing a proper pattern. But even if it doesn't, those scales on the back are perfect in every way. They line up absolutely perfectly, which is one of my real things that I'm really fastidious about. This one here in the middle, this one here, was one I really wasn't sure about. I'd have been absolutely certain to keep it, apart from that black smudge that's by the dorsal fin, that's on the orange there. But I gave it the benefit of the doubt. And then this large one here is one that I've followed for a long while. The red pattern on it seems, or red, orange, yellow, whatever you want to call it. Pattern seems incredibly volatile and unstable. I'm sure at one point in time they had a whole head pattern. In fact, it might have been completely red. But I like the size of it, and just interesting to see how it develops as an indicator of how similar examples might develop in the future if we breed this parent set again. So that's where we're at with this at the moment. These 8 fish go into the tank for the moment, and later in the summer they'll go out into the main pond to continue their growth and hopefully continue their development as well. So that's the end of today's video. I suppose it's time to recap really, and my thoughts about how it all went this season. There were obviously lots of frustrations, but I'm happy to have these 8 fish, really am. The whole thing was a massive experiment and a massive testing plan to see what was possible and what could be achieved. And there were so many lessons that have been learnt over the course of that 12 months. Certainly in the early days, and the way that I will do spawning. Unfortunately, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, coronavirus has really messed around with my plans for the year. The plan were that we would have 6 new tanks set up before spawning started, so another 3,000 or so gallons of water compared to last year. And I've got so many parents that I could put together, and we'll look at more of those parents in future videos. I know the channel has been quiet regarding the spawning, simply because nothing's been happening. It's just a case of growing, and that's what the fish have been doing. Now spring's here again, so 2 tanks arriving tomorrow, so we'll start to cover the build of those and the plans, and we'll look at some of the other parents that are in the main pond, fish from last year, and some of the various combinations we could put together. We've got so many options available to me, far more than I could possibly use. Unfortunately, there was big plan this year was to do lots of artificial spawning rather than natural spawning we did last year, to really sort of get a grasp on the numbers and that kind of thing, and more control over the development of the fry in the early stages. Unfortunately, coronavirus is likely to scupper that somewhat unless social distancing is relaxed by the time spawning season comes round, because I don't see my mum out in the garden in the midnight stripping eggs and sperm from koi and mixing them together, etc, etc. I wouldn't expect to be doing that, that's for sure. So it's probably back to natural spawning for the season, to say, unless coronavirus social distancing restrictions are relaxed, and we can get some assistance in to come and help me on those spawning evenings. So I say, lots more to come over the coming weeks and months as the 2020 spawning season gets underway. I'm sure it's not going to be as big as I'd hoped, but we've got some exciting fish to be spawning with those parents that I showed you at the start of the video. If I can only do 1 spawning, it's looking, I think, like the Kujaku will be the spawning that gets done. And then if later on in the season I can do more, then so be it. That's what we'll try and do. But certainly Kujaku is probably going to be the first spawning that we do as soon as the temperature and the things get set up ready to do that. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and you'll get updated as soon as new videos are added to the channel.